in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shokoth, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shokoth and Azakan in Emphas Gemema. I don't know that one. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel on the mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the didn't come out right, out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose weight was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had grievous brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing of shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are you come up to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye serve to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me, then we will be your servants. If I prevail against him, and kill him, then ye are our servants, and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the army of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together. When Saul and all of Israel heard the words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of that Ephraimite of the Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the men went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 oldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to battle. And the name of his 3 sons that went to battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him was Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistines drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now thy brethren ephod of his porch, corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captains of your thousands, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their plague. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion of the Philistines of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the army of the Philistines, and spoke according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that has come up surely to defy Israel? Is he come up? And it shall be, the man who killed him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and to make his father's house free in Israel. And David spoke to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that kills this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that they should defy the army of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killed him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke unto the men. And Eliab anger was kindled against David, and said, Why comest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride, and thy naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down, that thou mayest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him towards another one, and spoke after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard from David spoke, they rehearsed him before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there was a lion and a bear, and I took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he had arose against me, I fought him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defiled the armies of the living God. David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hands of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. You know, I've always heard it different. And if I remember right, I read it different whenever I first read the Bible. And it wasn't the armies of the armies of the Lord. It was more, it seemed like it was different. But anyway, I could be wrong. Alright, 38. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with the coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he assigned to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. In other words, what he's saying is, the reason why he didn't prove them, because he never wore them. He doesn't know. He can't fight in that stuff. He's just him, by himself. You know. So if you're not used to something, you can't. There's no way you can work it out. Oh, I got stuck. All right. So he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrap, and his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bore the shield went before him. When the Philistine, looked about and saw David, he distressed him, for he was but a youth, and a ruby of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog that comest to me with a stave? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistines said to David, Come to me, and I will give thee flesh unto the fowl of the air, and the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defiled. This day will the Lord deliver thee into thy hand, and I will smite thee, and will make thine head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistine this day, and to the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass when the Philistines rose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran towards the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slung it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone stuck into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran, and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Think about them. The Philistines were giants, and I'm talking about giants. Okay, they wasn't small people. They wasn't like me and you. These were giants. You know, the Jolly Green Giant. Okay. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted, and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron, and wounded of the Philistine fell down by the way of Sheraim, even to Gath, and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel turned from ceasing after the Philistine, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it back to Jerusalem. But he put his armor in his tent. And then Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine. He said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose the sun is his youth. And Abner said, As thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, Inquire thou whose son the stripling is. Wait a minute, now he should know who he is because he had David go in and sing to him. He should know who David was. That don't make no sense. Alright. And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistines in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son art thou, thou youngest man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jeth, the Bethlehemite. Alright, we're on 18, and I'm going to call it quits from here. And we'll pick up on 18 the next time.